look at the other guidelines. So before we get started, I'm going to start us with a short prayer. Let us pray. Holy One, God of justice, breathe into us today a spirit of curiosity and humility. Help us engage with mindfulness, following the lead of voices from our community. Guide our speech and our self-awareness so we may honor the divine in all people. Amen. So now I will hand things off to Katie and Street Voices of Change.
Great. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Great to be with you all. So we're just going to take a minute to introduce ourselves just so you know who's here, who's speaking today. My name is Katie Dillon. I am the director of Align Minneapolis. I've been with Align about 3.5 years, but have known about the organization since its inception in 2008. I'm a member over at Plymouth Congregational Church, which is also one of the founding members along with Westminster. My road here, it was somewhat winding. I came to Minneapolis to work in corporate. I worked for Target headquarters just a couple blocks away. And then I went back to school to get my master's degree in social work. And that kind of led me to be involved in homelessness and homelessness prevention. And so this role has just been a really incredible role for me, getting to marry my faith values along with my social work background. So glad to be with you all, and I will turn it over to Tyra to introduce herself.
Good morning. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Tyra Thomas, and I am born and raised in South Minneapolis. I am the oldest of 3 children, and I have 2 sons. One has passed away. I have lived experience of homelessness on and off for 20 years. I have been housed for 10 years, coming, was that February? I think it's February. Anyway, I'm also a member of Central Lutheran Church, and I am also one of the original members of Street Voices of Change, which you'll learn more about soon.
My name is Stefan LaSure. I moved to Minneapolis in 2009. I'm a member of Street Voices of Change. I have a pet peeve. It's called education. That's my role I play here at Street Voices. It's about acknowledging the situation and collectively asking the community, what can we do to make a difference? And as a member, we got together as homeless and formerly homeless people to discuss the treatment in shelters, to give up 30% of your income and to come in at 4 o'clock and be told that you were kicked out for 30 days, but you don't get no money back. And this was an ongoing situation, so we sat down and we had strategy charts and educating one another about how to use these strategy charts, and we came up with a few ideas that simply made a difference. They could no longer take your money like they used to. The GA went up because of what we were doing. We also have a shelter bill of rights that says that even though I'm homeless, I still am human.
Thank you, Stefan. You're getting ahead of us.
Yes.
And wait a minute, I'm going to toot his horn a little bit. Because it's my beloved best friend. Awesome writer, one of the original members of Street Voices of Change as well. So just wanted to note that for you.
Yes, thanks so much, Stefan. So we'll get into a lot more detail on some of those things Stefan was mentioning. we just want to give a little bit of history. Beth mentioned a little bit about Align Minneapolis. Align Minneapolis, we are an interfaith collaboration. We have now 18 faith congregations and people with lived experience that are part of our collaboration. And our goal is to work together to address homelessness. And that really goes along the spectrum of homelessness, from preventing homelessness, meeting immediate needs for folks in our community who are experiencing homelessness or are housing unstable, as well as driving systemic change and long-term changes that will mitigate some of the injustices that have happened historically. A little bit about.
A little bit about Street Voices. Street Voices of Change originated in 2016 at Central Lutheran Church, just a handful of us, and it was over concerns around conditions at shelter, respectively the single adult shelters. And my personal journey with that is felt like I was just like walking around talking to people about what was going on in shelter and trying to gain an understanding about how others were feeling, and folks were just kind of scared to like have that conversation. Come to find that when I would stand up, or others I would see stand up for themselves, were usually mistreated, retaliated against, banned. Conditions at shelters was horrible, and some of them we had to pay. So the group got together, started having conversation, and before we knew it, the group just grew. So I wasn't just always just talking to folks and falling on deaf ears, or people were scared. Folks were willing to stand up because there was a safe space to have that conversation. And so we grew to roughly 100, 150 folks. We had 4 locations before COVID. We did lose 2 locations, but we're currently now at Central Lutheran and Basilica. So that's just this little snapshot.
Thanks so much. So with Street Voices forming, the group was really instrumental in helping Align to understand that listening to people with lived experience is critical to understanding what needs to be done to address the issues that folks are facing. And so really that is one of the core tenets, that is one of the core foundations of Align as an organization. A couple of members of Street Voices of Change sit on our steering committee, which is kind of like our board of directors. All of the priorities and legislative focuses and things like that Align is committed to, we're in partnership with Street Voices of Change on that. Oftentimes they are leading on that, and we are saying, how can we support this? How can we engage our congregational network so that folks know what's going on and folks know how to get involved and make that change? So we want to share just a little bit about kind of the current context of homelessness and housing. Data is so important to understand a lot of what's going on, and we know it also has its limitations. Behind every number that you're seeing is a person. And so we really want to remind folks that, these numbers represent real people, real lives that are deserving of love and care. But we do find that it's really important to understand kind of big picture what's going on in the data. So the Wilder annual report that came out in 2023 found that over 10,000 Minnesotans were experiencing homelessness. Now, the good news is this was down 7% from the record high in 2018, but it was still the second highest since that study had begun in 1991. We also know that the folks experiencing homelessness are disproportionately populations that have experienced historic trauma and marginalization, historic injustices specifically related to housing, things like redlining, racial covenants, deed restrictions. 7 in 10 people experiencing homelessness are Indigenous. So this is wildly disproportionate to the general population of Minnesota. One really unfortunate statistic that we have seen reflected as well in one of our programs around emergency rental assistance. Older adults over 55 are the largest growing population experiencing homelessness. This is up 7% in 2023 versus 2018. There's a lot of different reasons for that, but generally speaking, if we had to kind of generalize why we're seeing this happen, is that folks are on fixed incomes and costs of living and rent are rising at a faster rate than their income can keep up with. And we also know that there are a huge lack of affordable housing options to meet the need. The estimate in Hennepin County is that we would need 35,000 more units of housing that's affordable to lower and medium income folks to meet the need. So that's a huge gap. When you have a gap in units of housing, all housing costs are generally going to rise. And that's, again, kind of a general statement, but there's pressure on the housing market. There's not as many vacancies, and so generally costs will go up. Rental units are also really difficult to afford. Because of the lack of affordable housing options, many renters are what we call housing cost burdened, which means that they are paying 50% or more of their income to rent. The benchmark is that folks should be paying about 30% of their income to be considered affordable. And the estimate is that 60,000 households in Hennepin County are cost burdened. And so it's not surprising then to understand that one little emergency, one little financial hiccup can lead to a very real risk of folks becoming homeless when their budget is stretched so tight and so much of it is going to rent.
Could I add something to that?
Please,
When you
yeah.
talk about the housing, as I think all of us may have seen or heard the conversation around landlords who have been scheming around the rental pricing. It's also good to be mindful that not only are landlords monopolizing around that scheme, there's also management companies that I hope that that conversation will start being had. When you have top 5 management companies with 300 or 400 properties, and you get denied here and you get denied here, it kind of just blocks you out, especially in Hennepin County. And we've had some management companies who had way too many properties and they weren't maintaining them well. So some of these things will impact homelessness, especially if they're condemned or folks have to move and things like that. So just wanted to add to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Tyra. We do hear as well that folks, they might be in a unit, they might be afraid to express concerns about the living conditions, even if they're substandard, because they know that it might be really difficult to move into a different space or get approved for a different unit.
And also to note, being that it is impacting folks like myself, the skin that I'm in, and also indigenous bodies, but all of our children and our children's children, children who are going to college, children who come out and they're at an intake level pay, and I have to have 3 or 4 roommates just to pay rent. This is a huge concern going forward for all folks.
Thank you. Absolutely. So I mentioned that with Align, we really look at kind of the housing spectrum and meeting needs across the spectrum. So one of those is we want to meet immediate needs of people who are experiencing homelessness, who have previously experienced homelessness, or who maybe are housing unstable. There's a few ways that we do this. One, we have a choir, a community choir, no experience needed. Folks can show up as they are. And that is made up of people with lived experiences of homelessness. Some are currently homeless, as well as folks who do not have that lived experience. And it's an incredible way that folks are able to come together, experience joy, experience healing, and this kind of empowerment that comes from music and bringing it out into the community. I'll also mention that the folks then are building kind of relationships with one another, and between housed and unhoused folks, being able to have some really deep, hard conversations in a caring and loving way is an absolutely incredible kind of byproduct of this really beautiful choir. We also have direct service providers that are congregations that are part of Align that do direct service for the community. So the Basilica has an outreach program where they have, gas cards for folks who have a new job or ID vouchers. St. Olaf has a clothing closet, and as well as, Central Lutheran has a clothing closet and a community meal. Mount Olive down at 31st in Chicago, they work on meeting household good needs, so diapers, cleaning products, that kind of thing. So these direct service provider congregations, we all get together once a month and we're really coordinating. What are folks seeing out in the community? What are folks needing? Street Voices of Change led an incredible effort to get laundry vouchers over at the Basilica, because one of our congregations had those down at 31st in Chicago. But, it's hard to travel with your laundry. So if you're not really located nearby, then, you might have a little bit more of a problem. So, okay, let's work with Basilica to get that into a different space as well. So really, this is about meeting those basic needs and helping to make sure that folks have what they need when we know that if they are housed, but maybe their income, a lot of their income is going to housing, it might be really hard for them to get some of those household necessities, especially when SNAP, food stamp benefits don't pay for things like that. This group also oversees one of our biggest programs at Align, which is our Emergency Rental Assistance Program. This program steps in during short-term financial crises to help folks get caught up on their back due rent and help them move forward and be stable so that they do not fall into homelessness. So think of, maybe if somebody was between jobs or they had to care for a sick loved one and missed a couple weeks of pay. That can make the difference between being able to make rent or not. In 2024, we just had our wrap up of the year. We helped over 110 households remain in their homes through the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Yeah, it was, it's a small program, but we really feel like that's an impactful thing that we're able to do.
And just wanted to note on the emergency rental assistance, I did the intakes for the pilot when we first got started, and anyone in the state could come to apply for rental assistance. Of course, we didn't publicize it, right? But we saw that Minneapolis was the most need. So it's just the Minneapolis zip codes. Why emergency rental assistance outside of county is so important is that sometimes folks might have 2 episodes of an emergency situation within 12 months. And so county only helps within 12 months. And so that's where folks were falling through the cracks. And that's why that emergency rental assistance is so important that Align is doing.
Thank you, Tyra. So when it comes to long-term change, I mentioned that, Street Voices really looks to Align really looks to Street Voices of Change to be understanding what are folks needing, what are the changes that need to be made. And so in order to do that, we make sure that the groups are supported to have their twice weekly meetings hosted in Align congregations. We provide administrative support to that group. It's autonomous. They'll talk a little bit more about their work, but really Align makes sure that, that they're supported in what they need to do and what they want to do to make change. We also do congregational organizing. So this is going out into our congregations for things like this, having conversations and talks to help people understand more. But we're also looking to engage folks in whatever advocacy might be coming up, legislative advocacy, local, state level, helping to activate our networks to actually be engaging in making meaningful change and kind of that systemic longer term change. We also, like I mentioned, we do legislative advocacy both at local and state levels, and this might look different depending on what the topic or what the issue is, but that might be looking at engaging with City Council here in Minneapolis as well as state level policies. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Tyra and Stefan, and I will manage the slides as needed.
All right. Thank you. You want to read this one? The Street Voices. Well, did I do that already?
No, you didn't.
Wait. Oh, was that you? Or no, that's me. No, that's me. Sorry. Okay. A little kerfuffle. Street Voices of Change is created and led by people with lived experience of homelessness. So that's the only way you can. You need to. That's all you need to get into our meetings is to have lived experience of homelessness. I create community and power together, determine issues to work on, and organize for change. Matter of fact, I think Katie was mentioning something about organizational training, something that is offered every year at Central. Once a year in January. So matter of fact, I'm one of the trainers, and so we'll be in Mount Olivet Retreat Center coming up this week. So Monday through Friday. So it's a 5-day training. And Central Lutheran helps with scholarships so folks can attend. We provide feedback and accountability to homeless response system. And our foundational values of our group is community care, collaboration, respect, speaking from I statements, and everyone has a voice. I statements, I had to really work hard on that. Because for me, it was like, when you think we, it just kind of has this thing of like, I'm not alone, yet I can't speak for everyone in the room because it's like saying, you believe the same thing that I believe. And so we make sure that we speak from I statements. All right.
All right. Again, my name is Stefan. Street Boy. Let me put this up here. Is this mic on?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Street Voices of Change Influences provides expertise, advice, and feedback to Hennepin County systems, including monthly conversations, participation in the Heading Home Hennepin Executive Committee and the Shelter Efficiency Meeting, and participating in focus groups and RFP review panels. Speaking into Community City of Lakes Rotary Business Development cohorts, staff training, congratulations, legislative realities, state capitol realities, legislative committee hearings. We received the North Light Award for Inspiring Organizational Leaderships at the 2023 MCH Conference. These committees that we talk about herein, I sit on. And I find it amazing that we have people making decisions about the homeless community that have no idea. I mean, you might be homeless for an unknown reason. I became homeless because I crushed my foot. I worked 2 jobs when I got here. But none of that mattered after the fact that you go into homelessness. And what I found out about being homeless is certain people think it's contagious. They think you can pass it along like a disease. And you have those in the street, which is why I choose education, is because we have to wear those tags and labels that's put up on us from afar.
Thank you, Stefan. We will continue on, and I want to know more about that as well. Let's keep going. All right. Our impact. We created, based on our concerns around what was happening at shelters, we created the Shelter Residents Bill of Rights. And it got implemented into the Hennepin County adult shelter contracts. So when they come for money, as a consideration, our Shelter Residents Bill of Rights is in the application process as a consideration. And Hennepin County has been instrumental in making sure that the adult shelters are honoring that in some form or fashion. Like if we have concerns, we've had folks who came and said, hey, I was at Higher Ground and I got bed bugs. Somebody from Hennepin County walked over there and said, hey, let me see your beds. And then they saw cracks in the plastic. And then they got fixed. So folks are really honoring our Shelter Residents Bill of Rights. Our impact, we envisioned the free downtown storage in Minneapolis and partnered with Downtown Improvement District in Minneapolis on creating a safe, secure, free storage. Because folks who were going to look for housing or they were going for a job, they would hide their things. Or their things were being stolen. Or as you've seen in some of the encampments, a lot of folks' personal heirlooms, documentation was being tossed away. So we did collaborate, and one of our Street Voice members did a press conference with the mayor and also the Department of Transportation, because it is in Department of Transportation's parking ramp. So, yeah, so proud of that storage unit, and a lot of people use it. We also advocate for housing support reform to make the program more affordable, as Katie was talking about earlier, and that's effective October 2024. I went to the Capitol and spoke on that reform, because you would pay 90% of your income. So if someone went in with $700 of their Social Security benefit, they would only have $100 for the rest of the month. So try to pay a phone bill. Try to buy the deodorant that you like or you use, or things like that. They were literally, and that's a state-run program. It covers shelter, halfway houses, like from when people are coming from prison, group homes, you name it. It's a state-run account, and they had the worst um, uh, 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 program, I felt, as far as taking folks all their money. And so with that being said, we're hoping to work more on some other stuffs, like with people who get general assistance, the adult income folks will get every month. I did speak to that at that hearing, and Senator Noor was the one that called me down back from the gallery when I spoke on, because I was in that program, the well, it's housing support now. They used to call it GRH. And he said, Ms. Thomas, come back down. And he said, when I saw that adults were only receiving $203 since 1986, he said, I was shocked. Shocked. And so now it's $350. May not be much to a whole lot of folks. Yet, when folks are in a housing support program, that money they still only get, they still have to pay pretty much 90% of their income. So hopefully we're going back to Capitol and kind of implement a little bit, because for Black and brown Indigenous bodies, it speaks to generational wealth.
Yes, thank you, Tyra. And I'll just mention that going and testifying at the Capitol, I mean, it's hard and it's intimidating, but especially when you're bringing your own, personal stories that, there's trauma behind them, it takes so much. And we know that it's incredibly powerful for lawmakers to be hearing from folks with lived experience. So I really appreciate that's one of the things that that Tyra, of course, but other members of Street Voices as well, when they're willing to show up to these things, it's so impactful. And we also need to recognize, like, that is a huge gift that they have given, kind of the community to show up in that way. So thank you for the work that you do there.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
So last slide before we get to our Q&A, because we'd love to hear what questions are coming up from folks. So one of the things that I just really like to remind folks is that one of the important things that we as members of faith communities can do is that when we come to this work, we really see the humanity in each other. That includes, each other who are housed and each other who are unhoused, or those who are formerly homeless. We want to break down some of the stigma, some of the stereotypes and judgments. I really appreciated that in the lead up, Beth mentioned that, not coming in with stereotypes is a really important way to come into this work. We know that homelessness changes over time. We know that there's and as many folks who are experiencing homelessness, that's how many stories of ways that people became homeless there are. So we know that everyone's story is different, and we know that we want to respect that, and we know we want to hold that humanity. Also, continuing to raise up the voices of people with lived experience. When I give these presentations, I feel a little bit like a broken record because I talk about this so much, but we cannot underestimate the empowerment and the inspiration and the real change that comes when people with lived experiences are showing up, and that we're supporting folks to do that. And then, we also want to remind folks that as we come into this work, when we do this work together, we are able to build power. We are able to organize together, and that truly will make change. And we know that none of us can do this alone. That's one of the beautiful things about the interfaith collaboration that we do, coming together across faiths, across all sorts of different housing statuses and socioeconomic statuses. It's just a really incredible way to show up together to make that change. All right, so love to move into Q&A. What questions do folks have?
So as a reminder, if you have a question, make sure you wait for the mic so that the people online can hear.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. I'm just wondering, how much impact does the federal government have on your work as opposed to state and local government?
Yeah, it's complicated. So, of course, no, easy question. Start out with an easy one. I can speak a little bit to it. I know you'll have some thoughts as well, Tyra. So, the federal government funds certain things related to housing. So there are federal housing vouchers that are administered through HUD that come into our community for all different sorts of populations. Recently, they've really committed to a lot of veterans housing vouchers, to end veterans homelessness. So those things are incredibly important. Vouchers are a way that folks can have rent that is affordable. So let's say rent is $900. Someone's income would be affordable for them to pay $200, and then the voucher makes up for that remaining $700. And so it's a way for folks to get into community settings, just, any properties that are willing to accept a voucher, which legally they have to, but that's another complicated thing. So HUD does have some really important contributions into the homeless response. There are also ways that other government benefits play into things, things like SNAP, that's coming from the federal government, that's food stamps. And there's also money for families that used to be called TANF, now it's, well, in Minnesota it's called MFIP, and I don't remember what it's called federally. But so there's money that comes into the county system through that. So there are ways that the federal government is funding some of the homelessness response. And we have not felt like there is a huge ability to influence federally. And so we do not put a ton of effort into federal legislation. We feel like the impact is more closely felt when we're working city, county, and state level. So we do not do as much in the federal space.
Right. Yeah, HUD. HUD needs to do more, especially when we talk about Section 8, the housing vouchers and things like that. I found it interesting just to kind of give you a glimpse of like the power structure. The Met Council, not too long ago when the light rail first came up, and there was a lot of complaints about people sleeping on the train, especially out towards the Mall of America, because that was the first one, right? And the CEO and the conversation of the mall and the Met Council emailed back and forth about the conditions of, the situation with homeless families on their train. And it became public. And the CEO said to Met Council, well, if you just give them a Happy Meal, they'll go away. And it went public, right? Well, shame. Oh, everybody's paying attention now to this conversation. Next thing you know, Met Council went and got like about 200 vouchers from HUD or Housing Authority and was facilitating them for folks who were on the train. But note, during this time when they went and got these vouchers, that all of the Public Housing Authority waiting lists were closed. And I'm like, go do some more of that. How did you do that? And they were all closed. Power structure. The other thing is the federal judges. We just had the federal judges uphold Johnson versus Grant Pass. If you know anything about Johnson versus Grant Pass, 3 folks, well, one, Gloria Johnson, but there was 3, I think 2 other people in tow with her too. But anyway, it was her case. She's in Oregon. She's sleeping outside. She's sleeping in the park, wherever it was. They told her, oh, you can't be here. Gave her a ticket for being homeless. That impacts homelessness because open cases, tickets, money owed affects people getting into housing. But what was so crazy about it was that she didn't have anywhere to go. They say, oh, you go find shelter. Well, there was no shelters. So she fought the case all the way to the federal courts, Supreme Courts, and they upheld. So they just gave a signal to the whole country that it's okay to criminalize someone being homeless.
That reminds me of a saying that I've known since I was a child, and that is, everybody has to be somewhere. And we as a society haven't figured this out yet. I understand there are a couple of cities that are doing a little better, and one of them was on NPR recently. It was Denver. The new mayor there has got a program. I wonder if you all know about it, and if you see it as being successful or walking in the right direction. But I have a second question too, and the second question is, in the data, what's the breakdown by gender of homeless here in Minneapolis or Minnesota? Thank you.
Thanks. Great question about the data. Do you know?
I wanted to answer the first part of your question, which was Minnesota has more resources than most states. They have the financial ability than most states. What Minnesota doesn't have is one clear agenda about resolving homelessness. I mean, you think just giving someone an apartment resolves homelessness? There must be a follow-up. You must talk to people. Do you have a trade? Do you have something you would like to do that would help you sustain this? Because right now, Minnesota's in what you call a change-out program. You've been in this apartment for 7 months. You don't have a job. We kick you out. We bring somebody else in, and we claim that we put somebody in housing. But you also put somebody else out of housing
Right.
because there was no follow-up. You know, would you like to go back to school? We have some resources to do that. Would you like to go to trade school? Something that will sustain you going forward, not allow you to be dependent.
Back to why it's rare, brief, and non-recurring. This is our
Absolutely.
motto.
Absolutely. To answer your question about the gender breakdown, I don't know offhand. That number, that total number, 10,500, it represents everyone from, children all the way through seniors. If you're slicing single adults, there does tend to be more men than women in the single adult homeless population. But that's a subset. So I will have to get that information and see if I can dig a little deeper into that.
Right, I thought that was a great question.
Yeah,
When I was homeless, came to the realization that there's not even enough shelter beds for women.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to answer your question about Denver, so I don't know if what you were speaking to was the safe outdoor spaces, but we know that there is an initiative in Denver that's around sanctioned outdoor spaces for people to stay when they are unhoused and unsheltered. That is an initiative that the city of Minneapolis is actually looking at to understand what it could look like for Minneapolis to have something similar. And so that right now there is an ordinance being drafted that would then go to the city council for more conversation. What we've had discussions around on our steering committee related to that is that, one, we know that ultimately we want everybody to be housed. And we know that that is not the reality, today, that not everyone has housing today. And there are not enough shelter beds on any given day. And so we know that there will be people staying outside. So generally speaking, when folks are staying outside, we want them to have access to things that are going to help them be more safe and have a more dignified experience. Things like access to sanitation, access to garbage disposal, things like that. So there's also a model up in Duluth where there was safe outdoor spaces for folks who were staying in their car. It was run by a congregation up there in a parking lot. They had security, they had access to restrooms, things like that. So that's one of the reasons that City of Minneapolis is looking at what could this look like for Minneapolis. So more to come there. And I would just mention really briefly, it looks like maybe we're almost out of time. We're doing okay. Okay, I was like, oh, people are getting closer. Are we out of time? The other thing that I'll mention is that Hennepin County is actually being held up as a nationwide model for some really incredible things that Hennepin County is doing and ways that they are investing in the response to homelessness. And so much of the work that they do has been incredibly influenced by the folks at Street Voices of Change. Hennepin County has developed a relationship over time with Street Voices, and I think, has a pretty decent kind of feedback loop and level of rapport, and they are truly listening to what folks are saying. When folks are saying, we need more case management so that we can navigate getting into housing, the county created 2 different case management teams, one focused on folks who are staying in shelter and one focused on folks who are staying outside, to get folks who are staying outside directly into housing. And it is working. They're held right now as a nationwide model, and they are doing incredible investments. And a lot of those investments were funded by one-time COVID dollars. So there is a fiscal cliff that Hennepin County is facing where they are looking at it. These types of things are now at risk of not being funded. So there's going to be one of our legislative priorities this state session. There's going to be an ask for the state to give some funding to counties and continuums of care to help to fund these types of initiatives that we know work, informed by folks with lived experience.
That's right, because they don't want no smoke.
Right.
That's our street slang. They don't want no smoke. We're get together.
So these are the types of things where when we talk about long-term change, it's things like investing in what we know works. So I would just encourage folks. I'm going to put in a little plug to go on our website and sign up for our monthly newsletter, and we send out information, including ways that Hennepin County is being recognized nationally for the things that they're doing. And I wonder, maybe, do you want to talk a little bit about Built for Zero?
Oh yeah, Built
Yeah.
for Zero is a national organization started by Community Solutions, and I've been working with them. It seemed like forever now, 4 years. It's been so long. Built for Zero is really instrumental in gathering folks from all over the country, community-led advocacy groups to end homelessness. Folks who are just like, I want to do something. How can I do this? How can I start a Street Voices of Change group like you? And how to meaningfully engage with people with lived experience. And so we have Built for Zero, teach communities all over the country on how to engage folks to be a part of ending homelessness. And so Built for Zero is about a functioning zero. Homelessness is going to continue to happen. It's going to happen. Folks get to place for all kinds of reasons. Divorce, fires, tornadoes, funerals, someone got sick, terminal illness, all kinds of reasons. Doesn't necessarily always, the stigma I want to break is that folks are on drugs and their mental health. Some of those things are impactful. Folks I got to know out in homelessness didn't have those issues until they became homeless. Very traumatizing. And you're trying to get back in. Well, look, this door ain't open, that door ain't open, the liquor store is open. Folks are traumatized. Homelessness is very traumatizing. So Built for Zero is helping communities get their numbers down. And I'm very proud of Minnesota and other states now who are at functioning zero when it comes to ending veteran homelessness. My grandparents are buried in Fort Snelling. They'd be so proud of that work. So, Built for Zero is about it being rare, brief, and non-reoccurring in real time.
So before we take your question, many times, and this may be your question, is how can I get involved? So Westminster is one of the founding members of Align Minneapolis. It used to be called Downtown Congregations to End Homelessness. Eric Adams has been deeply involved. I sit on both the executive and the steering committees of Align Minneapolis. This is one of the best things that I get to do. I'm so grateful that as part of my role, I get to be with Tyra and with Stefan and with Katie and with these other 17 congregations. We can do more at Westminster if we can get someone to be our representative at the organizing team. We would love to have been, now I'm really glad for the laundry vouchers, but that could have been us. And so we will discern those kind of things if we have greater involvement beyond me. So the organizing team is awesome. Katie meets with them. They're the ones that develop the campaigns. And so if you are looking for a meaningful way to be involved and to connect with other people of faith to impact this issue, and you get to work with Street Voices of Change, please think about being a part of the organizing team. Also, Homeless Day on the Hill. I had not been since before the pandemic. It was freezing cold, but I tell you that as I walked up to our house, because that's the people's house,
That's
absolutely sacred. And who did I bump into going in? Betty. Okay.
Yes, thank you. March 12th, Homeless Day on the Hill. Mark your calendars.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I appreciate that there are people that are working to get shelters open and to get safe spaces outdoors. I like what Stefan says with helping those people once they're in a safe place, get some training or get some education, because the safe place isn't going to be there for them all the time. Is there something going on to give them, working with colleges or even high school programs that do technical stuff? I don't even
You
know.
know, case management, you have housing case managers, you have all kinds of types of case management. And so Stefan is describing just one aspect of what case management can do. It depends on what case management type you have, who would support those goals, like a mental health case manager, housing case manager, um, uh, um, arms workers. There's all these different types. And so what Stefan is alluding to is that the support, the wraparound support that needs to happen in robust ways. And as Katie was just saying, they're already talking funny about money. So it just makes sense to invest in having those supportive people around. I like when my mental health comes and visit me once a month. You know what I'm saying? It holds me accountable. And then also if I'm going through something, someone's at my door when the door is feeling like 500 pounds or the phone is feeling like 500 pounds. You know what I'm saying? So it's really important to have those wraparound programs.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the great things about some of the case management teams from the county is, generally speaking, when they're working with somebody to get them into housing, they're also going to be saying, once you're in housing, what else do you need? And what is going to help you to be successful? And if that then is a referral to some sort of ongoing case management, long-term support services, like that's usually happening right then and there during that process. And that then the hope is that it, keeps folks stable. The other thing I'll mention, and we kind of talked about this when it comes to, the work that the county is doing, but we've also heard from affordable housing developers and providers, those support service dollars are the hardest ones to get. They are very difficult to get support service dollars from the state. There's not enough support service dollars. And so oftentimes, organizations like Common Bond and Beacon and places where, they're getting folks into housing that's affordable, and folks that need support services, it's very difficult to maintain that ongoing funding.
It is.
And so it's one of those things where is the money going to come from? We need to be asking everyone, right? County, state, federal, so.
I just like to say that we have a golden opportunity to reach at this problem from both sides, from what's been passed on through our communities to our children's, has already proven to be a guarantee for 3 more generations of homelessness. If we don't educate them, learn them, at the same time we're providing you a house, we're asking you to participate in something that could actually change the direction of what you've been going in your whole life. This becomes a norm for those who can't read, who can't write, who've become introverted because they don't believe in the system. So if the system is working from the bottom up and from the there up, then you can't lose at that.
Yeah. Well, and one of those things as well, where it's kind of like this sort of back and forth is, we know that if children don't have a stable home, it makes it very difficult for them to be as successful in school as we would like them to be. So there's programs now that are investing in children that are homeless or highly mobile, trying to help them get stable, their families get stable, some ongoing rental assistance, some ongoing case management, because it truly starts, at a young age. And to break that cycle that Stefan is referring to is so important.
Yeah, with the recent Moriarty task of expanding expungement, it's really important. These are the things that block growth and development, life skills, life growth, the rites of passage, if you will, from child to adult. Adulting is hard. I think I can speak for all of us.
Great.
I try to be, I had an adult day and I'm still growing, right? Even as an adult, right? So with the Moriarty of expanding the expungement to even children, because those things will block a whole lot of stuff that they want to do or are going to be encouraged to do. But then there's this record. My mother went through the same thing. She was government bonded for 21 years, retired. And then, after a year, she got kind of bored. She said, I'm going to come out and go back to work, and went to go apply at Dollar Tree or something like that. They pulled up something when she was 17 or 18. I was like, what? Huh?
That's brutal.
70-some years old, and you're saying what? So, yeah, expungements are really important, especially for some of the children who are in this juvenile system currently are experiencing homelessness.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Katie, Tyra, and Stefan, for sharing your insights and your perspectives. Next weekend, maybe we have a slide, I bet, yes. Next weekend is Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. On Saturday morning, Westminster is hosting members of several congregations here in the Meisel Room. I believe 9:30 is the gathering time, and the program starts at 10. We will be working together as we prepare to develop anti-racism policies as required by the collaborative work of the General Assembly. And then on Sunday, we will join with the adult education team and host a joint social justice forum in Westminster Hall and on the live stream as we welcome Reverend Dana Newhouser, minister at New City Church in Minneapolis, and a consultant and trainer with the Sacred Reckonings Initiative. There is more information in the bulletin and on the church website. We look forward to seeing you at one or hopefully both of those events. Thank you for being here today, and thank you again to our presenters today.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.